as Marty just explained, in the federal regulation, it states that whenever we're using alternatives, that those alternatives must be required by state, federal, local authority. In one sentence in our regulations, whenever you have requirements required put back to back, it's pretty clear that that by no means means voluntary. Example 2. Assessment decisions are supposed to evaluate whether or not water quality standards are attained. That incorporates both designated uses, criteria, and also anti-degradation. And so with anti-degradation, despite the fact that ADEQ does not have specific assessment methodologies for determining whether or not there are declines, the words anti-degradation and maintain are pretty clear. And many states utilize trend data for this type of thing, which is certainly an option for Arkansas. And Sarah pointed out that, the Buffalo River Watershed Management Plan did an exceptionally good job of evaluating trend data and effects, long-term degradation within the Buffalo River watershed. There are 796 pages in that document, and they very clearly detail where we see statistically significant declines in the Buffalo National River. And that data undoubtedly should be used as a reason to list those segments as impaired, because that's the whole point of anti-degradation. The third thing is that, we're going to talk about narrative criteria as far as narrative nutrient criteria. That definition states that nutrients shall not be in quantities that stimulate objectionable algal densities or otherwise impair designated uses. Now, in the assessment methodology, it does address whether or not there's a free trade approach very long to address whether or not aquatic life uses are impaired. But it doesn't get at whether or not more sensitive uses are impacted, such as our ERW, our extraordinary resource waters, whether or not those are being maintained. And our ERW definition within it clearly states that those are water bodies, like the Buffalo River, that were designated based on their aesthetic beauty, and so on and so forth. And so, again, that use is still not our most sensitive use for our first national river is still not being assessed. The rest of these, of course, I will save. But I think that you get the gist that there is more that we could be doing, and there are certainly more creative things that we could be coming up with that are actually meeting our federal requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Jenny Masulo.
Howdy. I'm Jenny Masulo, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I really wish y'all had answered my question about how you would address a permitted facility in the Buffalo River watershed. I think the public deserves that answer. I don't think that using the Buffalo River Water Management Plan as a rationale for high priority protection that obviously the people of this state want I think it's very problematic. I've already addressed the fact that when some of us were there trying to be part of the Buffalo River Management Plan, we repeatedly requested that Big Creek be placed on it based on robust data. That was denied. And now we want to use the water management plan, and Big Creek is the only tributary that is impaired in the watershed. Something's wrong with that picture. So even if now when beautiful Buffalo River Action Committee meets next week and they announce that they're switching gears, there are still problems because by definition, permitted facilities cannot be addressed. This would include C&H Hog Factory Farm, which is in the last 5 years has spread 14 million gallons of waste in the sensitive karst terrain of the Buffalo River. Since this is such a potential source, along with other sources, we're not saying this is the only source of impairment, but it is certainly, as Gordon Watkins said, the 800-pound hog sitting here in this room, It is certainly a potential source of over-nutrification, the phosphorus overload that we've been talking about. And whatever plan is in place needs the authority to address that. Since the impairments are already acute, it also is not adequate for voluntary best management practices. They have their own set of problems, debatable problems, to be stringent enough and in a timely manner to address the problems that we have. Only voluntary action is required under the water management plan. This can be a long process for the volunteers to secure funds to implement voluntary remedies. Certainly, best management practices are welcome in the watershed. We need them, and we need much, much more. Also, Arkansas's water management plans don't have a stellar track record that we would want for the Buffalo River, for the crown jewel, for the resource that it is. One might look at streams such as the Illinois River, the Cache, and the St. Francis, who after 8 to 14 years of voluntary actions still exhibit impairment issues. The Buffalo River and its tributaries deserve every avenue of action. And I agree that the water management plan is one avenue. Yeah, we want it. But why is it not possible to place these streams in Category 5 and implement all alternative actions? And I mean all. Are you listening, Caleb? Good. Anything less is simply more than hogwash. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have anybody else that was interested in making a comment?
I'd like to make one further comment, and I couldn't feel sure.
Okay, we can give you one more minute.
When your timer went off, it spooked me, so.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to add is that many of our members live in the White River watershed. When we've got 70 miles worth of algal blooms coming down the Buffalo River, people in the White River are all of a sudden saying, what happens? And asking what happens, not if, but when that reaches the White River. 60 or $70 million worth of commerce that the Buffalo River adds to the state of Arkansas. How much commerce, economic benefit does the White River contribute for the trout fishermen, the resort owners? Think about that, and is that going to be enough to get our agencies and our state and local politicians to respond? We've got to get them to respond to this quickly and adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that will conclude our public hearing for today. I want to thank everybody for your time coming out, and for all those of you who commented, we greatly appreciate that. For those of you who are still working on it, will submit submit written comments during the remainder of the comment period. We look forward to receiving those. Our staff will be hanging back if any of you all have any additional questions or would like to chat a little further about some of the things you've seen on your review. So that will conclude our hearing, and thank you all for your time, and we appreciate it.